Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My guest this week is Mark Cribb, entrepreneur and founder of the hospitality group Urban Guild. Mark has previously been a guest on the podcast, and 2 years since he was last on the podcast, I wanted to welcome him back and talk to him about the impact the pandemic has had on the hospitality sector. As ever, Mark is passionate about his views, but I also wanted to understand from him how it has changed his outlook on business and his philosophy on life. I really hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, Mark, again to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be back.
You were the very first guest on the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
I'd forgotten about that. Blimey. Hey, how long ago was that?
That was 2.5 years ago, nearly.
So what number are we now-ish?
We're about 115-ish.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, so 115 episodes in. You did come back as a guest in April 2020, and we'll touch on that again in a moment, I'm sure. But, you know, for our listeners that haven't listened to those 2 previous episodes, why not? I suppose I want to know.
Like that's possible, Warren.
Yeah, of course they've listened to them. And if you haven't, go and listen to them. But actually, just to open the podcast, and you know, for those that haven't listened and want a little bit of background, please just tell us a short bit about yourself and the Urban Guild.
Short bit. You know my answers too well, don't you?
Yes.
So, to cut a long story reasonably short, travelled for a couple of years, fell in love with humans and travel and the world. I went around Australia and New Zealand and all sorts of places. Came back to the UK, lived in London for a decade, practising on other people's businesses, and then wanted to get into hospitality and people, which is what I really, really love. So, bought a very rundown old B&B in Boscombe, turned it into the Urban Beach, and a couple of years after that opened a restaurant on the beach, Urban Reef. And then I forget the order now, particularly if we've closed some, but we ended up with Urban Renaissance, a cafe in the Russell Coates Museum, and Jenkins and Sons in Pen Hill, Wood Oven, a wood-fired takeaway place on the beach, and Urban Garden. And I don't own all of those anymore because the journey's taught me, some things work and some things don't, and sometimes you've got to, close things as much as open things. But here we are, 16, 17 years into the world of hospitality. We employ 130 odd people in the summer. We turn over about 5 million quid a year, but we've kept it really, quite local. I don't have shareholders and I've not gone global, Warren. So still just little old me selling sandwiches on the beach in Boscombe, fundamentally.
Sandwiches on the beach in Boscombe. Very, very good. So we did speak, though, in April 2020, off the back of a series of episodes we did about touching on different sectors, and clearly the hospitality sector, April 2020, where pandemic had hit. We're in that first lockdown. You had recorded a very emotional piece walking along the beach, which touched the hearts and minds of lots of people, and we spoke about that and the impact it was having on the hospitality sector. I suppose I've got to ask the question from here, Mark, what's that journey, this is a big question, but what's that journey been like since?
Yeah, at least you didn't ask for that one to be short.
No.
You know what, it's a bit of a blur remembering back to the specific dates of that, because that would have been, literally in the heart of the chaos, wouldn't it, of the first lockdown. Yeah. And yeah, that was a really challenging time. So, those 6 months probably after we first got locked down was just chaos. And I think it was this sort of juxtaposition of the the emotional responsibility of all the people you employ, the video that you mentioned that I did was just because I felt a responsibility for these 100 odd people that I mentioned. And you know, I know lots of them have got partners or wives or kids and families, and you just feel, you know, so much, you know, love for them because they've helped you build this business over the 10, 12 years beforehand. And you really want to look after them. And we felt very helpless because you can't have a business plan in place for the kind of change that we went through. So that was really difficult. But actually, you know what, as an entrepreneur, and I didn't used to use that word for myself, but I think it's probably okay now, 17 years in. I'm not just a sandwich maker, I guess. But, you know, I like throwing all the balls in the air and actually, you know, dealing with the chaos and the carnage. And actually, you know, that's when I have to step up to the plate because, you know, I don't get as involved now in day-to-day service. And, you know, I don't get the buzz and the rush of jumping on the coffee machine when the bar's getting slammed, or jumping on the pass in the kitchen because I'm too old and uncool now to go on those places and the staff kick me out. But actually, there was nobody that could step up and liaise with the banks and the solicitors and you know, the senior team and actually lead the business and deal with all of that stuff. So I have to say, with the ability to now look back, I think it did energize me and give me a real you know, sense of day-to-day achievement at the time. I haven't finished processing, you know, the longer term impact of that, as in, you know, did that suck so much energy and time out of me? You know, do you almost need a recovery period from that? And have I taken that yet? I'm not sure. It feels like, you know, we just lurched from crisis to crisis to crisis with you know, particularly in hospitality. I mean, even if you just go back to this Christmas and Omicron and the timing of Omicron coming, you know, right in the heart of our busy period. And whereas before this is a really long answer, isn't it? But whereas before we would plan, you know, our Christmas menus and our New Year's menus, and we would constantly be planning sort of 4 months ahead. If I don't have Christmas ready by the end of August, you know, I failed. But we couldn't really do that through COVID times. So maybe it taught me that I don't need to look as far ahead and to plan as far ahead. But it's been exhausting. It's been exhilarating, and I actually think the business is probably in a better place off the back of the learnings that I'm sure we'll go into a little bit now than it was beforehand.
There's a few interesting. It's a great answer and a great response, but there is a few things that come out of that. And one of the common themes that I'm hearing, and I felt myself, was actually, you're right. You know, maybe we're not involved as business owners and leaders as much day to day as we were day one when it was just us and when you had a very small team and you grow the business. But there was this sense of being needed again, wasn't there? And actually, in a strange kind of way, then how did then we all played to our strengths, which probably some of us had got a little, and I'm talking about myself here, not you, we got a little bit complacent, stood back a little bit. But that sense of being needed and our skill sets coming to the fore was really important, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, and it's a reminder, I suppose, of why, you know, ultimately the business has been, you know, successful, because, you know, most businesses, let alone hospitality businesses, do fail in those first couple of years. And actually, you know, one of the reasons for that failure is often financial, and we were in a tough spot when COVID first hit. We just opened Urban Garden, so we ploughed a huge amount of money, and you know, like an entrepreneurial, we sailed pretty close to the wind with our level of investments, and so I pushed it really far. But it did remind me of, you know, almost why we have done well is because I'm actually pretty good. You know, I love hospitality and I love customer service and I love food and drink and all the stuff that goes with it, but I actually do just love business, and I do like numbers, and actually I like the network and the ability to sit with the bank around the table and get them to not just look at the financial picture, because the financial picture was, you know, you're an idiot, you've overinvested, you've overextended by opening another restaurant, you've now been hit by COVID, you're going to run out of cash really quickly. You know, it would have been very easy for them to pull the plug. But actually, because of the, you know, the history of the business and because of our passion and because we could articulate and demonstrate, you know, levels of competence, as well as, you know, maybe some and even, you know, I'm doing a disservice to the silly decision, because, you know, Urban Garden is a great restaurant and it was the right thing to do, and you can't always do everything with a safety net. But yeah, it was good to go, okay, yeah, you say you have still got both the gift of the gab, but actually the competency to demonstrate, you know, the medium to longer term success of the business. And you know, hats off to you know, NatWest and the legal team, and I suppose, you know, to be fair, obviously, you know, furlough and Rishi and VAT, all of these things did come together, and they did give us the opportunity to continue to trade. So, you know, it really was a teamwork situation with the government, with the bank, with me and my team. But yeah, I couldn't have delegated, you know, joining all of those dots. That had to be me that did it. I enjoyed it, and it reminded me that, yeah, you know, you have got a skill, even if you're too old to go behind the bar.
And also that leads to this other thing, isn't it? Is you, as the entrepreneur, you were making change happen. You were seeing what was needed. You were playing to your strengths. But managing change in itself it has its challenges, particularly when you're entrepreneurial, and you're driving that change.
Yeah.
How did you manage that impact of all of that change that was happening around you and your team and the people within the business?
I'm laughing because I think I've always driven a lot of change at pace over all the years that we've been open, and maybe it demonstrated to me, and I'm only just really thinking about this, which is why I'm chuckling, maybe it showed me how my team feel sometimes when all of a sudden all of this change was thrust on me rather than me thrusting it on them. And actually it was pretty exhausting. So maybe it taught me that you don't have to run as fast as we were running. Maybe we don't need to change as much as we were changing. Actually, getting back to the simplicity of our business, we did a lot of things in the various sort of stages of COVID, from setting up home delivery business to setting up Valentine's boxes we were delivering, to cocktail kits, to a takeaway system where you could rock up and have the food put in your boot. We probably went through not just the change that was happening at a managerial and structural level, but we just tried loads and loads of different things to stay afloat, and actually probably did 10 years worth of initiatives in 18 months. And maybe what I learned from that was that just focus on what you're good at, and actually adding all these layers of complexity to the business was a huge distraction for the team. And so we I suppose off the back of that, we've probably changed our current approach to really just getting back to the basics of our business. So reducing all those layers of complexity. I mean, I had, and some of it was enforced change, and I miss aspects of it. But if you think of our bakers, we had our in-house bakery team, Kay the Cake and Naomi. A couple of lovely humans had worked with me for probably 10 years, making all this lovely produce. But they were great in many aspects, but we would always have to carry their costs through the winter. So we were a business that had the desires, I suppose, to do everything in-house and for long-term employment and probably a growth strategy for years. But actually, when you look at what's actually making money and what's costing money, some of these things didn't make sense financially. And on a human level, they made a lot of sense. But when your back's against the wall, you do, unfortunately, there's the definition of a successful business is it has to still be in business, isn't it? It can't just be nice and employ people. So the changes off the back of it, we're probably getting rid of, and poor old, Matt, our marketing team and the interns, again, great humans, loved working with them, loved some of the things that we worked on, the loyalty system we built, all of this stuff. But there's a load of tech and process around, and noise. There's just a lot of noise around all of this stuff, and a lot of energy and a lot of decision making. And actually, at the back, off the end of it, we couldn't afford to keep a lot of these systems and processes in place, but B, we had to get back to what is profitable. And you know what, it's much more profitable to bring 1,000 people to my restaurant over the course of a day and feed them than it is to deliver 150 boxes to people's houses dotted around Dorset. It's not rocket science, but it's not until you actually do that, because you see all these things on TV, whether it's HelloFresh or Deliveroo and all these different businesses, and you think, God, I'm an idiot, I should be on the back of all of these. But then you trial them and you do them and you go, you know what, we're really good at running a restaurant on the beach where customers come in and it's a beautiful sunny day and they get an icy cold beer, looking at the ocean and some great service and a nice DJ playing some tunes and a bit of banter with the team. That's what we're good at. So the change has really been, almost less
back
change.
To basics, really.
Stop changing. That's
Stop
the
changing,
change.
Yeah.
Stop changing.
But that kind of back to basics philosophy, and I suppose your industry has changed though, isn't it? In that 16 years that you've been trading, I remember some of those early conversations we had were around, you wanted to either find the best kind of cakes, you wanted to find the best bread, you wanted to find the best beer, you wanted to find the experience of everything was about craft.
Yeah.
And you're one of the first people I ever heard speak about that, and therefore but that industry didn't exist, did it, in the same way it does now? So you had to do it all in house.
You did.
Whereas now, those craft suppliers, those niche suppliers are there, aren't they, for you to tap into? So your philosophy hasn't changed, I assume, but you're just tapping into suppliers rather than having it in-house? Yeah.
No, you're right, to some regard. And in some regard, my philosophy changed and realised that to run a business, it has to be profitable. If you just look at the learning from Jenkins & Sons, where I refused to sell any craft beer for the first 2 years that we ran that venue. Sorry, not craft beer. I refused to sell any multinational beers. I only wanted to sell British, interesting, quirky, artisan beers because there's so many of them and they're so lovely. But also, it was great philosophically, but as soon as we made the compromise and said, right, we'll put in one multinational beer, and it was Estrella, and it didn't just outsell the next best beer, it outsold all of the rest of the beers put together. So I didn't hang myself, Warren. I just decided that, okay, fine, you do have to sell what the customer wants. And it's a bit like the plant-based movement a little bit at the moment, is you can have exponential growth of a very tiny percentage, and it's all the noise and it's what everybody's talking about. But the reality is, it's still small, and maybe we'll touch on that, because it's something that I'm trying to grow, but you realise that, you're growing it from a very small start. And that was the same from beer. But you are absolutely right. Now it is easier to work with smaller, more independent suppliers, and just to walk that line and get the balance right and go, because we do have a moral obligation to pass on good value to our customers as well. So it's no good only selling the quirky niche if it makes it prohibitively expensive. So we'll try and have we're never likely to sell you really your bulk standard cheap gin as your house kind of pour. We're always going to go in at the more premium end of the market, but at the end that finds that balance that's right between quality and price, so not super premium. But so the philosophy's not changed. It's become a little bit easier, but I've also think we have got better at maybe recognising that the public do want some of those brands.
Good, I have to ask you this, Mark, now, and that kind of back to basics philosophy and that response there. Now when you look back on your 16 years, do you regrets too? Nobody really should have regret, but in hindsight, would you have done the whole journey differently?
I'd have learnt faster, Warren. I think. I don't think I'd have changed what we did. I would now, but then that's just learning, isn't it? So yes, would I open a craft beer bar now that didn't sell, a couple of premium brands? No, I wouldn't. But that's the learning. Do I wish I'd done it in 6 months, not 2 years? Yes. But did I need to do it for 2 years to really, I didn't just do it and then wait. We promoted, we gave out tastings, we organised nights where, the brewers would come in and do talks. And I still believe that do it in the right town. I still think do it in Bath or Bristol or London. It's not me, Warren, it's the others. My ideas are all genius, but unfortunately the customers aren't ready for them. But Bournemouth and Port, it's an interesting, it can be a frustrating place to work. Same when we didn't do, no reservations when we first opened Jenkins, as in, you just rock up if you want a table, because the venue was geared up so you could have some drinks on the bar side and then go through to the dining side. And I know from a customer experience and from a flow and from an energy and a vibe in the room, it's absolutely the best decision for the restaurant and for the customer. But the customers don't get it. They come in and they go, can we book a table for 7 on Friday? And you go, no, just turn up, it'll be fine. But they don't believe you. And it works in London and it works in other towns, but you can't make it work locally. And I get it. It's because here we only go out maybe once or twice a week, whereas in London you go out 5 nights a week, so it doesn't matter. So.
And there's not the choice, is there? I suppose.
It's true.
If you're in London or you're in Manchester or you're in Bristol, you can. Well, that restaurant hasn't got space this evening. I've tried to do a walk-in, it hasn't worked. I'll go to A, B, C, or D. Whereas you're just running A. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you wanted people to understand that even if you have to wait half an hour and wait and have a couple of cocktails in the bar whilst you're waiting, or maybe 45 minutes, that's all right. That's not going to ruin your evening. In fact, it will enhance it, because you'll pick up on the energy and the place will be full. Because if you walk into a restaurant that takes reservations and you walk in at 6:45 because that's your table booking, it's probably going to be empty, even though they say they're fully booked, because they're going to stagger everybody's journey, everybody's rival, 15-minute slots. So you end up dining in an empty restaurant, getting annoyed about the fact there's no atmosphere and there's no vibe, but it's because you wanted to book a table. So dictatorship. No, we can't make jokes about that sort of thing at the moment, can we? Definitely not. Unfortunately not. So what I'm also interested about is that you've gone through in the last 2 years as an industry, but let's talk specifically about your venues, and particularly Urban Reef on the beach, from lockdown, no business at all, to staycations, absolutely getting hammered, demand outstripping supply. Yeah. How was that to manage? And what lessons did you learn as a result? Yeah. So pre-COVID, it would have been a 20 out of 10 stress level, and post-COVID, it's about a 3. Because really frustrating, and we didn't touch on it, but I suppose that's the other change we've made. Isn't just the structural change staffing-wise, but actually things like opening hours. So, to see all of that demand, all you really want to do is capitalise on that demand, which we would always have done. Is let's go bigger, let's go faster, let's more supply. And we would have pushed everybody. And maybe, a couple of things happened. One is the team realised, and myself, I suppose, that you do want some sort of work-life balance. You just can't get pushed. You can't keep your foot to the full on the throttle all of the time. You do need to release occasionally. Partly just because there are so many less staff. There's a genuine staffing crisis in our sector, because presumably so many people left the sector to go and get, jobs that are more secure
hospitality. So we had to change our hours. So even last summer, we were shut on a Monday and Tuesday night down on the seafront. Even in July and August, and I'd be down there sometimes, and I'd hear customers who didn't know who I was talking, going, "Yeah, it's ridiculous. License to put money. How can hospitality be moaning and they can't be bothered to open and stuff like that?" And you'd be like, you want to grab them and take them behind the scenes and show them your team who are still doing 70-hour weeks to try and get through that demand of the staycation and what's going on. And I was going, I went up to Scotland for a week and saw that it was a national picture. Everybody was suffering the same, and you'd speak to the team, and heartbreaking from them, because hospitality is a reflex. All they want to do is look after people and show them a good time, but they cannot work from 8 a.m. till midnight 7 days a week just because the demand is there. And I remember speaking to our local MP and say, look, we're going to miss an opportunity here, because you've got all of this demand. We can really show the UK off as a staycation market. People who normally go over to Benidorm or Mallorca or wherever they're going, let's show them how amazing staycation can be. Up in Scotland, I was canyoning, I was whitewater rafting, I was hiring mountain bikes, I was doing all these amazing things that I don't think people realise are here. But I was like, the hospitality cannot cope. We need some sort of short-term visa kind of scenario. It's no good, with what's happened with Brexit and government training and minimum wage, for the government to just say, just train people, because we can get inexperienced front house people. We can get British. They don't have hospitality in their DNA in the same way the Europeans do. I was interviewing one of my guys a couple of days ago saying, what made you want to get into hospitality? And he's Italian, and he's like, my grandfather worked in hospitality all of his life, and I remember the stories that he would tell me about the people he met and the journeys and the adventures and the stories, and I always knew that I was going to work in hospitality. And this guy's 32 years old. Wow, he's professional, really good. We don't get that over here. You get my dad said that I couldn't stay at home and watch telly or play on the Xbox, and I had to go out and get a job, and suggested I walked in a pub for 3 months in the summer holidays. So that's really frustrating. So the point was, but chefs even more so. Even though you can train front of house staff quite quickly, chefs take 3 or 4 years to get trained. We now have a crisis in our industry that we cannot solve because it's going to take 3 or 4 years. So the point being that we've just had to reduce our hours, and COVID taught us it was okay to close sometimes, and you just have to say to the customers, I'm really sorry, I have to shut on a Monday and Tuesday to allow my guys a couple of days off so that they can come back and they can still do a massive push and a massive week the rest of the week. So the answer is we capitalized on it as much as we possibly could. It was really busy, it was great, along with things like the VAT cut, but we couldn't take advantage of it as much as we would want to. And it's early days because we're now buried in the recruitment for this year, but it's not really looking any better.
I was going to say, is it any better this year, do you think?
It's not. Look, it's early days. We've got so I'm not 100% sure. As it stands at the moment, we definitely can't open 7 days a week again. As it stands at the moment, we're hoping that by May we will be able to, as we recruit and as we train, but it may be that we still have to shut a couple of days a week or a couple of nights a week, which is a shame when you've got such a short summer season. What I can't do though is break the team and know before, maybe if I broke the team, I could replace others with others, but I can't do that, and actually that's not right. We just need to recognise
way to run a business, is it?
We just need to recognise that hospitality cannot operate from 8 a.m. till midnight 7 days a week, particularly in a town like Bournemouth where it's so seasonal, because you go back, what you end up doing is you have your core team you keep for the winter, then you absolutely smash them over the summer and they're all absolutely knackered. You can't do that.
And what's that scaled up, scaled down in numbers look like? Your core team through the winter compared to the number in the summer?
50, probably between 70 in the winter and 130 in the summer.
So sort of double.
Yeah, nearly. Yeah. It's a lot of people to recruit and to train, and hard. And we're getting it now. I need a. I've got an amazing pizza chef at the Wood Oven in Bournemouth, and I'm like, look, we need another couple of you for the summer. And he said, look, I know loads of people. He said, but I don't know anyone who wants a job for 6 months. They want a job for 12 months. Perfectly reasonable, understandable. But I'm like, but I can't pay you for 12 months because we're massive outside terrace. That's when the customers are here and the demand. It's it's challenging.
But there's. It's a really difficult business to manage, isn't it? And as you say, that staffing piece around, is it Brexit, is it the pandemic, what's caused it? But it's a real need, and it's not just in the hospitality sector, is it? It's in manufacturing, construction, in travel, it's in all sorts of sectors, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm pretty optimistic about the future of the country and where we actually get people from. But I'm slightly concerned or pessimistic as to do the government understand it, and do they know the speed of change? I'm aware of some initiatives going on around trying to attract staff from maybe the Commonwealth countries or the Antipodeans or Indian and to go back to what we used to do, which was if I go back 16, 17 years, we used to get Aussies and Kiwis behind the bar and people from Canada or it was a global, and then it became very Eastern European centric. And I don't really mind. Ideally, I'd go global. I'm like, come from Eastern Europe if you want to come, but also come from other countries. And it's a great experience to come to the UK. And I don't know the technicalities of how the visas and the work visas worked, but now there is a lot of promotion going back on a global level and saying, hey, look, we're back open. Actually do come over and work for a year or a couple of years. There are visas available, and I don't know what the reality is as to whether how many people want to do that and what the economic situation is in their country. COVID just really muddied the waters. So whereas I could see the pros and cons of Brexit, it became con only once COVID hit, because everybody that was in hospitality went and got a job as a delivery driver or somewhere else in a different sector. Just because it was more stable. The one thing that is really interesting actually that we have done and could be a big change is the service charge. So whereas we've always avoided putting the service charge on the bill, and it's never going to be compulsory, but just having it integrated in the bill, discretionary service charge, 12.5% automatically added to your bill. And part of the motivation for doing that is because now people don't pay by cash anymore, and it used to be easier to leave a cash tip. Now they pay by card, but they don't even really look. They actually pay by their phone, and they just tap and go, and they don't really realise whether the service charge is there or not. But it's not about hiding that. It's just kind of going, you haven't actually left a tip, and the team used to rely on that. We've done some analysis, and it's it's been the case in the cities for years probably that they've been doing it. But we've looked around the market, we've spoken to our peers, and you will start to see everybody starting to do it this year, because that 12.5% going back into hospitality looks like it's going to be sort of between £4 and £5.50 an hour per person who's working, which is a significant pay rise, particularly if they're seasonal workers and they're happy to do 60, 70 hours in the summer because they want to earn enough to get through the winter. And I think that might lure people back in, because actually delivery drivers is really hard work. People who've done it, it's really challenging. Supermarkets don't have that element of opportunity. So what we want to do is show, look, hospitality, get back into hospitality. Not only is it fun, not only do you meet a lot of interesting people, not only is it buzz and energetic and vibrant, but actually now it's well paid, because now if you add that extra £5 an hour, that can make a huge difference to people. We've only just launched that. We've been trialling it at Garden for about the last 3 weeks. It's made a huge difference. The team are really pumped. They're liking it. They're motivated. Brilliant. We're just about to put it in at the other venues. That could be the lifesaver. The challenge with that, it shouldn't be an issue, because most people were probably paying a service charge anyway. The danger of having it on the bill is it looks like a 12.5% increase in cost at the same time that inflation's going back up to 20%. At the same time, you've got inflationary pressures, and the nervousness of me is it's almost like, it's piling up increase to the customers, and I just hope they understand that every single penny of that 12.5% goes to the team. And without that, it means you cannot go out and meet your mates and go for a beer and go for nice food, because there won't be people working in hospitality. So people need to understand, we just got to suck it up, because it's still one of the greatest gifts of life, I think, is that opportunity to sit with friends and break bread and drink wine and have fun. So I hope people remember that, and it no longer can it be a cheap night out. I haven't said that. It can be if you go to Wetherspoons. Oh God, I've plugged them. I know we're going to come on to that.
We will. We'll definitely come on to that. Yeah, but then that brings us also closer to the US model and the European model, where hospitality is seen as a career, isn't it? And a rewarding career, not just something you do in between university or between jobs, or and will give the industry that boost. But as you say, consumer pressure is going to come price-wise.
Well, not £9.50 an hour minimum wage now, for the over 23s, and that's huge, compared to what it was 16 years ago when I got into it. Well above inflation, year on year on year, plus national insurance, plus pension contributions. All of these costs. No longer can the industry cope with being a cheap sort of sector. It is, unfortunately, it is going to become more expensive to eat out. It's unavoidable, particularly if you want to care about where your animals or where your food comes from and stuff like that.
And then, do you think that's going to drive? We might as well move on to some other changes in the industry now, and what we've seen, haven't we, over the last 2 years, and it's continuing. And you've mentioned Deliveroo, but you've got the rise in all of the delivery services. You got the rise and the emergence of dark kitchens.
Yep.
So these delivery services not being kind of sourced from venues that we know and love, but just from a kitchen on an industrial estate. How does that? Do you get that fear that people will stop going out and they will start using delivery services, and there'll be a huge change in the whole catering hospitality sector, Mark?
Yeah, so on a human level, I'm really excited that a younger version of me, me 20 years ago, could get really excited about a particular style of food or a particular product or artisan thing or a love of a niche that I wanted to do. And actually the barriers to entry to open a restaurant are huge. So even just the street food movement, I think, has been exciting for people who can, go and rent a container for 6 months, try something out, and then, if it works really well, it leads to a restaurant. And actually the dark kitchen opportunity, to do that, I wouldn't want to get in the way of change. I think it's really exciting. I've got ideas around just having areas on the beach, for example, that are set up for catering, but there's no kitchen there. Stuff is just delivered on bikes and scooters and motorbikes and stuff. But you just create this energy. So in the main, I'm excited. I hope there'll be enough demand. I went in a Michelin-starred restaurant a couple of weeks ago, and it was a whatever it was, 12-course kind of tasting menu, and it was expensive. And if I'm honest, it's not really my style of food, but I really appreciate it. I'm really grateful that there is an outlet for chefs who've got that much time and that big a brigade and that much caliber to make that style of food is amazing. And I'd only have it maybe once every 2 or 3 years, but I appreciate it. But you need different things for different people. So I hope there'll always be a number of people who want to go to a traditional restaurant, get served by a human being, sit around, somebody pours the wine for you and comes over and delivers the food, and that's a thing. The difficulty will be if it does become too expensive to offer that because of the cost of your business rates and your insurance and all of these crazy costs that keep going up, and somebody else can come along and open a dark kitchen on an industrial estate and deliver it. I would hate one to lead to the demise of other. As long as they can all exist, then I'm excited. And actually, if a dark kitchen or some artisan pop-up street food can mean that 150 Kentucky Fried Chickens or McDonald's can disappear out of existence, then that would please me no end, Warren. Yeah. So let's just people support those little independent artisans, and maybe it's giving them an opportunity that before was being stolen by McDonald's.
Yeah, maybe it's an opportunity to exist and to grow.
Yeah.
But that delivery thing, we talked about your constant desire in the past to innovate. You've tried to do the delivery thing yourself, and
numerous times,
and decided actually it's too costly, it doesn't work. So are you now using some of these apps as a restaurant? How do you fit, because that's what a lot of the independents have done, isn't it? They've taken what they would normally deliver in the restaurant, and one way to survive was actually, we can't open, and we'll pump that through sort of Deliveroo and the networks. But they've continued to do that now they're open. How have you found yourself on that journey?
Yeah, so there's a lot that were doing it. A lot of pubs, that when they couldn't bring people in, did it. I don't know many that have done it at a big scale and gone, look, I'm going to carry on with that. There's some that have added, if you look at Hawksmoor and it's food boxes delivered to home, or Mitch Tonks at Rockfish, some of those guys have added a additional product, and that's flying. It's doing really, really well. But if you just look at your bulk standard pub that wants to sell you a pie and a fish and chips in your beer garden, and then it started delivering it, well, it's just trying to bring some sort of cash flow in and use some stock. I don't think they are continuing to do it, and part of that is because by the time you take off the 30% that the delivery company charges plus the 20% that's going to the VAT man, then there's just not enough margin in there to make it viable. And part of it will be to do with the pressure on the kitchen and customer service, and the time that people want the food is always on a Friday and Saturday night, and that's when your kitchens are busy anyway. So I think for it to really work, if I was starting now and opening a restaurant, I would have almost like a front door and a back door, and I'd have a menu that was designed that there was a rear entrance, because you don't want loads of scooter drivers and stuff coming in your front door, walking through the tables, grabbing food off the pass, and just the carnage it causes. But if you can design something where you've got a simpler menu, food that's really designed to travel, because in the early days of Deliveroo, its mission was to get restaurant quality food delivered to your home. And we started with them, I don't know, maybe a decade ago, trying to get a lovely medium rare fillet steak with a char grilled tomato and mushroom.
How's that ever going to be possible?
Sounds bonkers now, but that was their idea, and we're like, okay, we'll try it, but it didn't. I remember the first night I moved into my house, having it delivered and going, if it looks really good in a restaurant, it's probably not designed to go on the back of a motorbike. But even pizzas, one of the reasons we started selling selling pizzas was for the delivery market. But even those at Urban Reef is hard, because as soon as you leave Urban Reef, you've got to go up a hill. But you put a pizza in a box on the back of a cyclist, ride up a hill. It looks like it's been through a washing machine.
It's a very steep hill.
Oh, it is, yeah. So we're doing it again now at the Wood Oven. This is on my last sort of try with it. We're doing it at the Wood Oven at Urban Garden in the town centre, because it's level, because it's in the town, because it's got lots of chimney pots around it, because a 2-kilometre delivery radius has actually got loads of people, and because it's a secondary kitchen. It's not connected to my main kitchen. So there's these sort of operational issues around it. We're giving it another go. But yeah, I can't make it work at Reef. Like it's feast or famine. On a rainy February day, it was brilliant. At least you're sending out a bit of food and keeping the team busy, but you can't just constantly switch it on and off. And when it's busy and it's pumping down at Urban Reef, just chucking in some home delivery food that also needs to go out the door is operationally too challenging. So it suits certain markets, doesn't suit other markets. Okay. I still struggle to work out how these companies are ever going to make a profit. When we've done it ourselves, we've bought our own scooters, our own car, we built our own software, we tried to manage, because we were like 30%, surely we can deliver it for less than that, and it turned out we can't. No. So if we can't deliver it, they're doing it at a scale, but and maybe for people who want that gig economy, just jump into a job on a Friday and Saturday night, it works. But overall, I really struggle. I haven't bought any shares, put it that way.
No. Okay. And talking about sort of the scale and the big, and one of the things that you've been very vocal about in the past is private equity, venture capital coming into the hospitality sector, building chain upon chain upon new chain upon new chain, and opening kind of venues that never looked viable, but they were backed by PE and VC money, and therefore they took market share and all of those kind of things. But what we've seen, haven't we, during the pandemic is them start to suffer, them start to close venues, then perhaps start to show some of their true colours in terms of, going into debt management programs and doing all of those kind of things. So what do you think the future of hospitality is in that comparison between the large-scale PE, VC-backed kind of chains and the independents, Mark?
Yeah, so I'd love to be super optimistic on that. I know Gordon Ramsay's got himself into trouble in the last few days by saying that COVID, got rid of a lot of crap restaurants, but he didn't word it in a particularly nice fashion.
Well, he wouldn't, would he?
No. I just found the whole VC thing fundamentally depressing in a sector that I believe should have an authenticity and a genuineness, because there's too many things that can become bland and corporate and big. But for me, just that word hospitality, it's something that we do. It's like when somebody turns up at your house and you welcome them in and you hang up their coat and you get them a glass of wine and you tell them to go and sit in the garden and you put on some music, and it's a really personal thing. And when you try and turn that into a commodity, it makes me want to cry, because it just doesn't feel, it's such a juxtaposition between what hospitality should be and what we turn it into, which is the training that goes on behind the scenes. Whereas within the first 90 seconds of arrival, you must seat them, you must make eye contact, you've then got 60 seconds to recommend 2 different side dishes, and it must always be 2 different side dishes that are on the menu. You've then got 8 minutes to get the food to the table. There's a centralised kitchen where all of that food has been produced. It's designed in little packets and it's cut open and it's just heated up, and it's just turning it into this sort of ruthless efficiency. And disappointingly, sometimes the customers want that because they just want to get in and out and they want to know what they've had. But for me, in the same way that I expect a pilot to know how to fly a plane, I think anybody who works genuinely in a restaurant should know about food and where it comes from and how it's made, and maybe the farmer that's looked after the produce. And I might live in this naive sort of utopian world, but I believe in your passion in the same way that when you're working with your clients in accountancy, you don't just sort of hand them a leaflet that you've printed.
Some numbers.
Here's some numbers, and it's the same 50 numbers and the same template you've used before. You actually sit with them and you try and understand their business and
their journey and what's good for them,
and what's their what's their energy, what's their reward, what do they want from it, and hospitality for me should be that. So in many ways, when COVID started to knock out some of these massive players, I was like, okay, and because I never understood the maths, when I was looking at some of the levels of investment, I think it was when Tesco bought Giraffe and it was like 1.5 million per restaurant or something that they paid, and I found it incomprehensible, the level of value, or the fact that Pizza Express has got 1.2 billion pounds worth of investment from a Chinese company. I just like, well, what's this got to do with genuine hospitality? I don't get it. So it depressed me. And I'd love to say that therefore off the back of this, all the little independents are going to do really well. The reality is that some of the better run, and there are some good run I say chains, but if you look at Hawksmoor, they don't have that many venues, but they're brilliant at what they do. I mentioned Rockfish, for example, and Mitch. It generally comes where the owners, Will Beckett and Mitch Tonks, and I could name various others, probably the Honest Burgers guys and certain ones. And actually, I've seen some that where people were also, I'm thinking back to my podcast guests really, but Griff Holland and various others that have failed, but a lot of the sort of either the better ones or some of the big bat VCs have just seen it as an opportunity to suck up more venues and suck up more space because these places can't operate. So unfortunately, the big players have got bigger. Maybe the little players are more terrified about going into a sector that's been through so much disruption. So there's not a clear-cut answer to that yet, to say, oh yes, definitely, this has been really good, lots of good stuff is happening. It's still a bit of a mess. It's still a bit of a washing machine.
Space,
very much so. I mean, with VAT just going back up to 20%, even though there was a multi-party, parliamentary committee that advised that VAT should stay at 12.5% for hospitality permanently, let alone just for now, because it's been shown how the elasticity of how many people we employ and what we can spend on those staff, and if you just look at the business rates, at least that's still going through a discounted period. But if you look, we are a very heavily taxed sector. The amount of tax on beer and on spirits and national insurance, and if you add it all together, it's been proven that we're way more taxed than the retail sector. For example, we employ so many more people. If you go into a retail shop, you might have 2 people running an entire shop. You go into a restaurant, there's quite possibly 17 people behind the scenes running that. So I think it is going to be a period of turbulence, I think, but maybe in a couple of years, I would love to hope that some of the rubbish will have gone, people have had their fingers burnt, some really good properties will have become available for good, authentic operators, and I would love us to become more like Europe, where you do get those independent venues all over the place.
Go into any major town and they're all independents, aren't they, that are running and have been running and are successful. So, as we wrap up our conversation, got a couple of questions to end with. Actually, one that's come to mind during the course of this conversation is if you could go back now to that, I'm going to say 30-year-old you or 28-year-old you that started, the Urban Guild with, the Urban Hotel, what lessons would you tell your young self? What 2 or 3 things would you say to that individual?
I suppose... there's definitely that listening and learning faster, like I was saying before about the level of artisan food. I'd like to go back and give some quick wins and just say, look, you can focus on the right things. Don't much as your obsession for artisan or quirky or interesting or non-compliance, much as I respect that, a good business with a good structure, the more money you make in the business, the better you can invest in your people, the better you can invest in the infrastructure, in making it relevant, or the DJs or the music. And so maybe I just need to reassess that line and go, look, compromise a little bit more, sell what people want to buy, and that will free up some cash. I think on a personal level, I think having hit COVID and nearly lost everything, having nearly lost the business, having nearly lost the house, having seen sort of 16, 17 years of my work and time and passion and energy almost disappear within 3 months, almost go, look, wow, you're going to have to start again. All of that is gone. I'd probably give myself some sensible financial advice, which I think you've probably given me a number of times, Warren, which was, do look at getting money out of the business. I'd always ploughed every single penny back into the business. And I look at that, 40k a year SIP allowance and thought, God, if I'd used that for the last 16 years and put money away, put my 40k or whatever, more if I include my wife, if I put that away every year for the last 16 years, you'd be in a really good financial position. But I was pig-headed. I don't even know if I just didn't think about it, but every penny I got just got ploughed back into the business. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't make the same decision if I went back, but I'd like to have a conversation with myself,
kind of more informed
and just write down and just go, look, just crunch the numbers. If you put another £500,000 into a restaurant, or if you do this is what comes out, option A, option B. But that might just be that I'm now approaching 50, whereas I was 30 when I started, and maybe that recognition of nearly losing everything, you go, okay, be a little bit sensible. So God, it's a boring grown-up answer, isn't it, Warren?
It's a very mature answer here. And then so the final question has to be, you'd have been asked on a previous episode what your definition of success is, but now for you from a personal perspective, how's your definition of success changed as a result of recent experiences?
So I think, and I said this when I went travelling all those years ago, is that when before I went travelling, I thought people were lovely. I thought most people on planet Earth are delicious, nice people, despite what you see on the news. But I wanted to go from thinking to knowing. And so having gone travelling for a couple of years and met all these amazing different nationalities, different people, all these different experiences, I came back and I was like, I was right. People are lovely. And I think in business, I think I always thought the same. I thought, I don't think I want to own hundreds of restaurants. I don't think I want a national brand. I don't think I want to wake up every morning and work, like some people do, but I don't think I want to work 18 hours a day. But I thought all of that. And I think now, having been on the adventure and the journey I've gone, I know it even more. We did structure ourselves for growth, and we had a number of serious conversations around, shall we open in Southampton or Swanage or Bristol or Bath or these other towns that I like? Shall we open? And actually more and more and more, I've just proved to myself that, what I love about hospitality is still the same. I can walk along the seafront and I can see a couple of hundred people, on the terrace outside Urban Reef and the sun glistening on the sea, and I can listen to the conversations of people who are genuinely having, such a lovely time with their family or their friends. The clinking of glasses, the music on at just the right level, and people even talking about, we should buy a place down here, or why don't we move out of London and move down to the coast because it's so great. And I listen to that and I look at that, and it's just reminded me that that's where my buzz and my energy and excitement comes from. Definitely not about having more. So I think the key thing is now I'd go, look, let's do less better rather than more worse.
Okay, and that would be your definition of success.
Yeah. So sorry, I almost forgot the question, didn't I? So the definition of success for me, that therefore comes back to, waking up in the morning and doing what I want to do rather than what I have to do. And I don't think it's changed, but I think I always thought that was the case, and now I know it. I want to wake up in the morning, whatever that might be, whether it's going kite surfing, walking the dog, going to the restaurant and chatting to the customers or the team, whatever it is. I want to wake up each day and I want to do that with enthusiasm and passion. It's not about more cars, more houses, more things, more restaurants, more stress. It's such a short period of time that we're on planet Earth for. And just want to hang out with the kids and just, my parents, and just have a good time.
Brilliant. Thank you. As ever, such an enjoyable conversation. Thank you for being so open and honest, as you always are, Mark. If people want to know more about you and importantly more about the Urban Guild and the venues you operate, where can they go?
So urbanguild.co.uk is the parent website, and I'm on social media. I don't use it a lot because I tend to use it for work, but I'm at Mark Cribb on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, stuff like that. You'll find me, but you won't find me nowhere near as gobby as I used to be 10 years ago, Warren. Much quieter.
Is that another lesson learned?
Probably is, isn't it? It's like, people don't want to hear from me anymore.
And on that note, we'll end this podcast. Thank you for being a great guest.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.